How's it going, everybody? So in this video, I want to talk about the concept of what you focus on grows. I think this concept is very important, and I think it's like the real powerful phrase that can be the most universally and accurately applied concept from the law of attraction to really attract the things that you want in your life in the most effective fashion. So you hear this a lot of times in various forms, like what you think about, you bring about, or whatever. And I just think that those are too like specific and they're not as easily applied as just what you focus on grows, right? So if I think about an elephant, am I going to bring about an elephant? Not really. But the more that I think about animals and elephants and shit like that, the more of an urge that probably grows inside of me to go to the zoo and visit those animals or whatever. Or, here's another thing. Every time I bring up the law of attraction, I always mention the elephant example. And it's like the more that I mention the elephant example, the more it becomes like a natural tendency for me to bring it up in my videos because what I focus on grows. And I notice this concept is very powerful because it explains synchronicities. It explains how your emotions, like the more that you focus on situations that make you feel angry, the more anger you're going to feel, and the more frequently you're going to notice those angry feelings and angry situations. Like, for example, long before I learned about the law of attraction, I'd wake up in the morning and I'd have like a text message or something like that from somebody that brings up some kind of problem that we're having, and it like angers me and makes me upset, and because I'm not aware that what I focus on grows, I'm allowing that emotion to kind of plant a seed in me and then grow and eventually consume me to where it's not just like, oh, this person sent me a text message that angered me. It's now, oh my God, like I feel so angry, fuck this day, everything is bad. And it grows to where it like overwhelms me. So I don't have those issues anymore. These days, I separate out like occurrences from, like there's like, okay, there's a situation or something that happened or a problem I had with somebody, and that's separate from the emotions that I feel in that moment. And those emotions I feel in that moment are separate from my actual day and the objective experiences that happen. But most people who aren't aware of the law of attraction, they combine all of these things together where they're just like living life through their emotions, and they're letting their emotions consume them and then guide their focus and create things that are in alignment with their emotions throughout the day. So anyway, and like I've come a very long ways, obviously, because yeah. So what happens in situations like that is the text message or whatever shows up when you wake up, and then you're like, oh, fuck this person, I'm pissed off now. And then let's just say, I don't know, one of your friends comes over to your house, and they're like, hey man, how's it going, man? We're gonna hang out today. You got like a hangout scheduled, and then you're like, man, yeah, I don't know, I don't really feel like it. Fuck this and fuck that. And then like suddenly it's no longer just a text message. It's now grown to an emotion that is like consumed you, and it's taken over like hours of your time at that point. And now it's also spreading and growing to the friend that came over to have a good time with you. And now that opportunity to have a good time and focus on something else and grow positive feelings, you've actually now chosen to let those negative feelings grow and spread to your friend. And then you're like, yeah, I just don't feel like hanging out now. Now your friend is like, oh, well, fuck, now what am I going to do? And, and now it just grows, and then your friend leaves and stuff. And so there goes an opportunity to like focus on some positive vibrations and create good things now. And so now the rest of your day is like going down a negative road, and it's like growing to be something else that's negative. And I've actually noticed in other people as well as myself, although not recently because I don't let this shit happen to me anymore, but people start to get in car accidents and all sorts of like crazy things start to happen that I think are kind of like the result of what you're focusing on. Now let's kind of look at the opposite to this, right? So let's say you wake up and you have a text message and it's like, the same text message, and it pisses you off and you're like, oh, this is a problem, fuck this shit, right? But then you're like, okay, it's not the end of the world, that's okay. Let's try to make the most of today. And you go throughout the rest of your day looking for more positive experiences, and at the very least recognizing that one text message does not need to determine everything that happens throughout your day. You don't let it take root and grow out of control to consume you. Typically, when you let negative emotions consume you, you get into all sorts of fights with other people, and, you just start to spread that emotion into every aspect of your life. You go to the grocery store and you give people bad attitudes. I know people who, they go to the grocery store in a bad mood and then they like run into people on purpose and blame the other person. They're like, what the hell? Like, watch where you're going. And then they have all this anxiety that they bring with them, and they're like, telling me like, hey, Wolfgang, like people just, what is it with people today? Like they just don't, people are just stupid. Like they're just not looking out and being considerate of other people. And it's like, little does this person know it's actually their perception of how things are, and they're projecting their negative emotions onto the rest of the reality, which is creating more negative emotions and creating more of those perceptions. And actually, the likelihood of you like getting in a fight with these people are now much greater. The likelihood of you getting in a car accident is much greater because you're focusing on these negative things. And most people who speed around and road rage, they probably wouldn't road rage like that if they didn't allow these negative feelings that build up on long road trips or whatever to spill over and consume them to the point where they act irrationally. So I've noticed this is a really huge thing. Like first and foremost, just allowing your emotions to create your reality is the first thing. People are very reactive rather than responding. They're like knee-jerk reaction, like like someone says the F word, like, what, you said the F word, fuck you, versus like responding like, oh, that random person said the F word, it's just a word, the word has no meaning, and they weren't even talking to me, and I don't even know who the fuck they are, I'm gonna let that go. Compared to, the experience I always bring up where the guy's like, oh my god, he said the F word, and he starts freaking out at me, and he's like in a wheelchair and disabled. It's like, bro, like you shouldn't start fights with strangers because you're not actually physically capable of defending yourself. Anyway, so let's say you get the damn like, what the hell? No, what the fuck? Okay, something just happened to my computer. Let's say you get the random text. You get the text message in the morning, and it's like a negative thing, but then you're like, nah, it's okay, I'll still have a good day. And then your friend comes over later on in that day, and like you scheduled, and you're like, man, I'm in a bad, I had some bad shit happen, but we're going to have a good time, basically, right? You might even tell your friend, like, hey, like I kind of had some negative stuff happen earlier, so if I'm a little bit off, that's probably why. However, we're going to have a good time today, so don't worry about it. Just, so you know, right? And that's fine, because then they're not going to be asking you about, like, why you seem off or whatever, right? And then you can, like, really focus on the positive things now, and you can create positive situations. So those are, like, two different trajectories that happen. Like, you literally change the creation of your day by choosing on what you focus on. Okay, and 9 times out of 10, and this is why. So, then you end up having a great day, and then you forget all about your negative problem, because when you focus on the positive things and having fun and whatever else, productivity or whatever goal it is you're trying to achieve, that grows and grows to the point where it basically clouds out whatever negative thing was trying to grow before, to the point where you forget about that negative thing. And this is also how focus is created. And I think this is a kind of strategy people can use for like ADHD, is understanding that the more that you practice focus, the more that skill grows, and the more you're able to focus over time. And focus starts off very, very like scattered, and then it starts to narrow and narrow, and you grow more and more concentrated energy towards focusing on one thing over time. So another kind of example of how this works is I start recording a video, for example. And at first I have a general topic of what I want to talk about. And I have a couple of different things I want to bring up during that video, but they're kind of just like not in a video yet, right? So they're kind of, I don't even have a blueprint. But then I just start talking about the subject, and I have a general direction that I'm going in. And then my mind just like, magically or naturally brings more and more thoughts and ideas and visualizations and images in that direction. And basically this video grows as a result of me focusing on the general topic. And you can notice in a lot of my videos, sometimes I'll take a weird turn. I'll start focusing on, I'll start talking about something else, and then I go down that direction until eventually I have to bring it back to the first subject. That's because I'm slowly but surely, my focus is turning towards something else. And if I let it, I'll go down like a completely different hole than, a completely different rabbit hole than what the video was originally about. But that's an example of how what you focus on grows, and your mind takes you in whatever direction it is that you kind of like guide it towards, right? So with affirmations is just a way of getting your mind to go in the direction of whatever you're affirming, and then whatever it is you affirm starts to grow in your mind. It grows in your awareness and what you notice throughout the day, and then it grows in your experience. And so another really good example is synchronicities. So I've talked a lot about how, like one really good example I always bring up is, I had a client who, me and her used to always talk about the law of attraction and stuff. And I guess I got her in the law of attraction, she said, I believe. But anyway, she brings up like Guns N' Roses and the music singer Selena or something like that. And some song by Guns N' Roses or something. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. I'm not really into Guns N' Roses or anything, but she's like talking about how amazing the song is and everything. I'm like, all right, that's cool. And then I kind of just like let it go and forget about the song, which is interesting. But I train like another client or whatever, like 30 minutes later or an hour later. Next thing you know, on the gym radio, that song that she mentioned starts playing. But it's not the exact version that she mentioned. And it's like, that's weird. Like this gym never plays this type of music on the radio, but okay. So I start to notice like the synchronicity. And then later on, like another hour passes by, and then I have like one of my last clients of the day, and that person brings up that song or the band Guns N' Roses that plays that song. I'm like, that's really weird. Like I completely forgot about the 2 times before this song came up or this band came up, and now I got 3 synchronicities lined up, right? And so that I've always felt like synchronicities work through a different kind of mechanism than visualization and the law of attraction stuff. I feel like that's a different type of manifestation or something. But I've noticed this shit all the time. So another one, and it's always like coincidences people insist. Another thing is like just last night, I was watching some video. I don't remember what it was. I think it was like a jiu-jitsu video from a channel I've never seen before. And as I was watching the video, I got like a Facebook Messenger notification, but it didn't say what the notification was yet. And then on the video I was watching, it said Brandon now enters the tournament. And I'm like, Brandon enters the tournament? What the fuck? And then I remembered, oh yeah, I messaged my little brother Brandon like 12 hours ago or something, and he sometimes doesn't reply depending on what it is. So I'm like, okay. So I looked at the notification, and sure enough, it was my little brother Brandon. And so I just thought that was, that's like a synchronicity that happened. And I was like, that's just the weirdest one, but okay. And these are things that actually happened. So another synchronicity is at my jiu-jitsu tournament recently. Like me and I don't remember who it was. Me and someone else were talking about my last tournament, and this one guy, like my first opponent who I fought, who didn't really do so well. Let's just put it that way. Anyway, I had to go to the restroom, so 30 minutes later, I'm like in the restroom and getting ready for my first match. Sure enough, that exact opponent happens to be right there next to me. I'm like, bro, you're competing at this tournament? Like, first of all, why? Second of all, like, it's just the fact that he was there at that time, getting ready to compete right next to me, was just like really crazy. And we just mentioned him. So, and there's a lot of other, I mean, this happens to me all the time, like when you start to focus on synchronicities. And that's another thing, is the more you focus on synchronicities, the more you start to notice them. But then if you don't even tune into this shit, sometimes you might have coincidences where you think about somebody that you haven't seen in years, and then they message you or they call you. And that's when you always hear about. But generally speaking, if you don't tap into the magic of the universe, you don't really see them as often. But then if you do, then you see them. Another example is like, the common example people say is like they'll buy a new car, and then next thing you know, they just notice that car everywhere, even though they didn't see it before. And for me, I specifically will like make it a point to notice certain cars, just so that I could notice if my mind starts to notice them even more frequently. And the one that I've been doing recently is a Dodge Avenger, because I was really trying to get a Dodge Avenger a couple months ago, and I don't know, it just wasn't a good enough deal or whatever. And then next thing you know, I start to see a Dodge Avenger everywhere. And it's pretty interesting. But the car I bought, I don't see everywhere. Actually, I started to notice that too when I started to focus on it. But yeah. So another example is, let's say, and this is a really good one, is like, for example, I was studying Neville Goddard and the Law of Assumption. He's like a popular kind of manifestation guru. And the more that I started to read Neville Goddard and focus on Neville Goddard, I started to meet people. Like my jiu-jitsu coach, the head coach of my jiu-jitsu academy, started to talk about James Allen and law of attraction stuff. When I was just reading James Allen before I went there, which I thought was interesting. And people will start to bring up Neville Goddard. And then I remember I went to Barnes & Noble, and I never see Neville Goddard stuff there. And I just remember there was a book in plain sight, like in a bookshelf where it doesn't belong, and it happened to be Neville Goddard's book. And I'm like, this is the freaking Dragon Ball Z anime section. Why is Neville Goddard here? And I just feel like that is the concept of what you focus on grows. Like, the more you focus on things, the more that you start to see them in your reality. And to me, it happens almost like, it's not like a scientific, physical, reductionist reality thing. It's some kind of weird, magical, universal thing. Like, it appears to be some kind of magic shit. And people who are like really familiar with my content know that I'm very vocal about magical thinking, when it matters, at least. But in regard to this, number one, the placebo effect and all of these things have a lot of evidence. Number two, believing in this is only going to increase your chances of positive outcomes, even if it's not actually magic, as I mentioned before. Like, there's legitimately no reason why you would want to try to debunk this for yourself, like, unless you have like a dysfunctional personality. People who have like dysfunctional mood states where let's say like they are visualizing a gold medal and then they lose. Like, I got silver last weekend, right? Someone with a dysfunctional personality, when when the thing that they're visualizing or that they're affirming doesn't come into reality, they get disappointed and they go on like a depressive streak or they get suicidal. That is not positive, and that person needs to seek professional help, obviously. There is no amount of law of attraction stuff that can help that person. But for people who don't have issues like that, where they're like, they just have like an irrational attachment to shit like that, to me, there's nothing but positivity that can happen. And I've seen this time and time again, so much so that, like, I've had a client, for example, who, like, he had no coaches when he competed his first match or whatever. And I finally got there, and I gave him a pep talk for a whole hour before his next kind of bracket started. I was like, bro, you can do this. You've been training hard. And I started to get him to focus on all the reasons why he can win, why he's going to win. And for me, I'm very passionate. And I feel like I have a way of transferring my energy to other people through that, which is what I feel like I'm doing in my videos. I'm transferring my state of consciousness to others. And next thing you know, he won the gold medal once I was there. And while he was fighting the opponent, I was screaming at him and apologize in advance to the people in front of me's ears. And I feel like changing your expectation and changing the things that you're focusing on, I think that actually creates those outcomes. So yeah. So another thing, so the more that you focus on appreciation, the more appreciation you start to get. The more appreciation grows, the more things you have to appreciate. Let's say people who do things for you and give you gifts and stuff, if you take it for granted and you don't like it, eventually those people they don't give you shit anymore. But let's say someone is giving you a gift and you show extreme gratitude and you show how much it really means to you and you like legitimately appreciate the things that they do for you, and you really use the gift and all this other stuff, that person is usually going to give you more gifts in the future. And like if you're in a relationship where you are, let's say you have a friend, right? And you're always talking about how you don't like the friend and you don't like what the friend is doing or whatever. For one, they're not actually your friend, and it's up to you to like remove them from your life. That's kind of not a good thing, right? But eventually that person is just going to fade away because no one wants to be around somebody who, gives that type of energy. Instead of focusing on what you don't want, you should focus on what you do want. So another thing is, let's say, like, for example, my channel is mostly about sharing, health, the 20% of methods that give you the 80% of results in regards to health and well-being and stuff like that. So let's say I spend most of my time talking about conspiracies and the pharmaceutical industry is trying to do bad things to us and shit like that. That's what's going to grow. Like, all my fan base is going to be other people who are just like addicted to negative information and stuff. And I'm just going to have a conspiracy theory channel. And like most people, they're going to be like, they're not actually looking to feel good and to heal themselves. They're looking for more and more of that same kind of emotion. Believe it or not, negativity becomes an addiction. Feeling helpless and victimized is an addiction. And I've fallen into that many times before, where I was just like addicted to arguing with people over, like, oh, like you can carry your disease and this and that and blah, blah, blah. Why does my internet keep doing this? The fuck? So I find it's most effective to be pro whatever it is that you stand for. So that's why I make most of my videos about the things that I actually think are good, and I talk about these things. And like, if I talk about like veganism or something, it's more of a focus on entertainment and sharing knowledge. So what you focus on grows. But this is not also being like a delusional thing, right? So if you have a relationship, for example, that is not good, you're never going to improve that relationship unless you focus on it. But the key is focusing on it in a way that's productive. So if you focus on your relationship and the things you don't like by focusing on the anger and the negativity, a lot of times all it's going to do is bring up more fights with your partner and shit like that. But instead, if you focus on, I want a loving relationship, I want, a relationship where we are appreciative of each other and we have a good time, we have fun. Instead, what you want to do is focus on bringing that out in your partner and bringing that out in your relationship. So you're focusing on improving your relationship by focusing on having fun in your relationship. And it's like at first it might not really work so well, but eventually, again, it grows. It's a snowball effect. At first, you might have a lot of anger and resentment in your relationship. But the more that you focus on having fun with your partner and stuff like that, the more that partner is going to start to, the love and appreciation will grow in your partner until eventually your partner is, your partner used to be 30% fun and love and 70% anger and fighting. But then over time, your partner grows to 40% love and fun and 60% anger and fighting. And eventually your partner grows to 70% love and fun and 30% anger and fighting. You know what I mean? And it's like a lot of people, they allow negativity to discourage them and to kind of like demotivate them. And what happens is you just give up on like trying to be happy and shit like that. And sometimes that's a good thing, because if you really give up and you just let go, then you are focusing less on the negativity all of a sudden. That's why letting go is so powerful, because the more you focus on the lack of something, the lack of happiness or the lack of somebody that you love or something like that, the more that lack grows, especially if it gets really bad and you're in the state of like, oh my God, like I'm feeling crazy, I'm overwhelmed. The best thing you do in that case is like let go to the extent that is rational for that moment. And suddenly you're no longer focusing on the lack or the negativity. You've let go. So you're not focusing on that as much anymore. And so the momentum that you had starts to die down. And the negativity is no longer growing because you're not focused on it. Letting go is not the same thing as like positive affirmations and shit. Letting go is like, whatever. Whatever happens, or whatever. And there's more ease and relaxation now because you're not attached to any particular outcome. And because of that, your new vibration that's growing, the new thing that you're focusing on, is relaxation and ease and like detachment. And eventually that feeling of ease and detachment grows into euphoria, and next thing you know, you're in what Abraham Hicks calls the vortex, and everything that you could ever want starts to come to you. And so that I think is really, really key. So a lot of people, they focus a lot on like meat prices, for example, because of inflation and all the shit that's happened recently. And every day, like, they talk about inflation or whatever, and they talk about, meat prices are going up. For me, I don't let that shit enter my psyche. It's like, if I have to pay extra money for meat, I go and I might joke to them. Sometimes I joke to the meat guy. I'm like, yeah, fucking Illuminati or whatever. I'm like, but you're doing God's work. Keep it up. That's how I talk to my meat people, and they love me too, which is always good. They'll give me like grass-fed stuff for a good price. Anyway, and that's spreading positivity because I'm focusing on the joking and the positive shit that grows, And now their day is a little bit better because I came through and joked and whatnot. And otherwise, their day's pretty boring without shit like that. People don't think about the small things. Small things grow. The little smiles you give people throughout your day grows. Conversely, the little negative things you tell people, the arguments you get into, the little nagging you give people grows as well. People have this misguided notion that they don't make a difference in the world. But the fact is, you make a shit ton of difference in the world if you understand how little things grow in all aspects. Anyway, I don't focus on the negativity of the prices. Instead, what I focus on is how can I maximize my nutrition and minimize my the amount of money I spend. And what happens is, first of all, I find the same fucking meat that I always buy for half the price all of a sudden. Like, I've talked about this in my other law of attraction videos, where sometimes I'll go into, like, usually, believe it or not, I just go into the grocery store completely detached from the outcome. I'm like, I'm just going to buy whatever I feel like eating that's pretty cheap. And usually I'll check the prices just because I know, like, I always find fucking, like 50% off beef. So other people are paying $4 a pound for beef, and I'll pay half price. And actually, just about a week ago, I came into H-E-B. I'm like, all right, I know there's going to be a deal here. I'm going to find a deal, right? So I went to the beef section, and this actually happened. And there was a shit ton of beef stacked up. But the thing is, all the beef on the front end, it was the standard $4.50 a pound. And everyone else was just settling there. But for me, I was like, no, I know there's a deal here. Damn it, I've been visualizing it. I'm going to manifest it. And it's funny because I really was digging in there, and people were looking at me weird, and I was starting to feel a little nervous. I'm like, oh, don't worry, I'm just a meat inspector. And like, oh, really, you are? And of course, they actually believe, they're like, oh, that explains why this guy is like digging through all the fucking meat. I went all the way to the back because I'm like, I know my fucking discount meat is here. I got to find it, right? And sometimes the 50% off meat they'll put in the back so that that's the last thing you see. Because it's usually like a day old or something. So anyway, I actually found beef that was mislabeled as pork. And pork is usually like half the price of beef. I literally found like 2 pounds of beef for $4 because it's mislabeled as pork, and because I was expecting to find it. Like, to me, first of all, that could have been a major coincidence, and just because I believed it was there, I managed to find it. These people, these debunkers of the law of attraction would think, like, oh, that's just a coincidence. You could have just as equally been looking for it and then it not have been there. It's just a coincidence that it was there. But I don't know, man. I just feel like shit like this happens. And it's like that's just too much of a coincidence, bro. I looked so hard, and I didn't give up either. I was digging for fucking gold, and people are looking at me all weird. And I found my freaking half-price beef, but it wasn't the 50% off I normally get. It was like mislabeled as pork. I'm like, well, that counts. There's my manifestation. I can stop looking like a lunatic now, right? So, anyway, I notice, like, the more I focus on abundance, the more I find it. And also, like, the idea that feeling is a secret. If you start to cultivate abundance and you start to focus on the evidence that you've seen throughout your life of abundance, you start to find it in your everyday reality. For example, like I've mentioned how I found like a shit ton of like holy basil in the clearance section at Sprouts once, and hemp protein back when I was like vegan. Even though at the time, like before that day, I didn't even know the fucking clearance section existed. But just because I was tapping into that vibration of abundance, like what you focus on grows. And the other thing is, at that time, I was actually studying the benefits of holy basil pretty extensively. And I had already spent like $20 on that same supplement. And just because I think I was like, really researching holy basil, and then I was tapped into the frequency of abundance, I just so happened to find holy basil on sale there that day at Sprouts. That to me was crazy. And because they were during that time I was fucking vegan, and I was like looking for calorie substitutes, and I found that damn hemp protein. So, and I was really invested in like the nutrient content of hemp protein at that time. So I just find what you focus on grows. And that's another thing is like, a lot of people, they're like, well, just pretend that you're healthy and then you'll become healthy. And I think to a large degree that can happen, but not if you're the type of person that doesn't take action. So, being in jiu-jitsu is for example, becoming a world-class athlete in jiu-jitsu, you cannot just like sit on your ass and like try to visualize winning gold medals. Like, that doesn't happen at all. You can watch a lot if you can watch a lot of jujitsu videos and actually learn how to do jujitsu from videos. Believe it or not, watching instructional videos on martial arts. For a long time, I got really good at kickboxing and dodging punches just by shadowboxing, watching a lot of kickboxing footage, and then doing slow motion, watching kickboxing matches in like 25% speed or whatever, and then sparring with my friends. I developed a pretty large amount of skill by doing that. But the key, though, is I was focusing on what I wanted. And really just because that was fun for me at that moment. The same thing goes for music. I made a whole video talking about how I manifested playing in touring in a band and shit like that. And basically what I did was, well, it was weird. I don't want to go in the whole story here, but basically I traded a freaking an iPod for a boombox. And this was back in like 2007 when iPods were really big. And you know, it was crazy because that iPod was worth way more than this like fucking boombox from like it was like like a tape recorder boombox from like 1970 or something. But I bought like a shitty little microphone like for $7 or whatever from Walmart and plugged it into the boombox. Next thing you know, I started to do vocal covers, and every single day all I would do was listen to death metal, or not death metal at the time. I listened to Rob Zombie and Linkin Park, and every single day I would sing Linkin Park songs. And there's a video of me from when I was like 14 or 15 years old where I did the most horrible freaking Rob Zombie Super Beast cover. And everyone in the comment section was talking about how much I sucked, but I was just doing it because it was fun. And all I focused on was like music and skateboarding, and I pretended to play shows to my stuffed animals, right? My stuffed animal collection. And I always pretended to actually be in a live band doing Linkin Park songs and shit. Over time, I actually started to get really good at death metal vocals and kind of like really mediocre at rapping, but I became a death metal vocalist after maybe like a year or two of doing it. Everybody in my local scene started to know that I was a death metal vocalist. I started to attract a lot, like I attracted a friend very weirdly, basically. One of my family members brought me to lunch with his friends, and his friends had a son who was looking for friends, and he was focusing on developing friends and stuff at the time. And he invited me to his church. And he also invited me out to record skate videos. So he used to drive me around and record my skate videos for me. And we would hang out and have a really awesome time. And I introduced him to all of my friends, and he ended up dating one of my friends, actually. So what we were focusing on was growing, and we were co-creating, okay? And he brought me to his church, even though I wasn't religious. It was a really big youth group. And I met a lot of friends who also skated because they had a skate park there at that freaking youth group, which is pretty crazy. And they had a karaoke machine one day. It was Rock Band, the game Rock Band, where you do vocal covers and stuff. And I remember doing like a Marilyn Manson Beautiful People death metal cover in front of everyone there. Everyone thought I sucked, and they were like, why is this guy screaming at the top of his lungs at a church? What the hell? Get him off the stage. And there was one youth group pastor there who told me, hey, man, you actually did really good for the type of music that you're playing. Have you ever thought about starting a band? And apparently this guy has a band, and he's a drummer. And coincidentally, he also is trying to convert me into Christianity, kind of, but I didn't know it at the time. And he invited me out to hang out. He invited, you know, kind of like a big brother type of thing. He was like a group leader there at the youth group. And he started to take me out to coffee and to get tacos. And we would talk about life, and he would talk about my music career. And he would encourage me to join a band and to do something with my music. And, you know, he'd tell me it's like my God-given talent or something. And then sometimes he would try to, like, convince me to, like, become a Christian or whatever. And so he was focused on, you know, developing relationships with people and spreading the word of God. And I was focused on music and all this other stuff. And so, like Abraham Hicks was saying, we were co-creating, and what we were focusing on was growing. And my understanding of the law of attraction is growing. As I make this video, I'm making all sorts of connections. So it's really fascinating how all this works. So next thing you know, I was at college, and I was like combing my hair, and I was combing my hair and stuff like that, and I was wearing like a death metal shirt, like an impending doom shirt or whatever. And this guy happens to come up next to me in the college bathroom, and he starts combing his hair, and he's wearing a Cannibal Corpse shirt, and he's like, "Hey, bro, you got really nice hair, man. You need a freaking brush." I'm like, "Nah, man, I'm good. I got my comb or whatever." And he's like, "Yeah, man, girls must really dig you with that hair, right?" Or whatever. And I'm like, "Yeah, actually, girls love my hair." And he's like, "Yeah, man, like you could totally pull the bitches." And he's like, "Bro, you like impending doom? You like death metal?" He's like, "Bro, like, do you play any instruments? Like, I'm a drummer." Next thing you know, that guy, his name was Fred. He was like a really big inspiration at the time. I thought he was so cool. He became my drummer, and that was the first like legit band that I ever had, I believe. Yeah, at the time. Yeah, that was like the first legit band that I ever had. And next thing you know, we'd always like hang out, and we'd go talk to girls, and then we bring them back to our band practice. And the more we focused on music, the more people we met, and that was just super fun. So, and then of course, like people who are into Neville Goddard and stuff, they'll call that the bridge of incidences, where you start to meet, all of these these things that lead to your ultimate goal. But for me, I was just having fun, and I was always practicing vocals, pretending to play live shows. The only reason I really did that is because I loved it. I love that feeling of like I'm on a stage and just expressing myself. And so anyway, I played my first show like later on that year. It was like 2009 or whatever. It was like at a house party or something. I started doing I started to do guest vocals for certain bands. All of my friends were in bands, or they skateboarded because I was still skating and stuff. And yeah, it's like the more I focused on these things, the more that I manifested them. And so anyway, fast forward to 2010, I was in a couple bands I played shows, but I started playing major shows with my first incarnation of a band called Desecration and Demise. This was like summer of 2010. I don't have any videos of this particular version of that band, but we played like a Rose funeral type music, is deathcore is what we played. And we played shows, and then later on I played in another band called Ninjas from Texas. And now when I went in Ninjas from Texas, I met these guys on Craigslist, and basically Ninjas from Texas, all of those guys were actually family members of Fred. And so I was in a whole band that was related to Fred, my first like drummer guy or whatever that I met coincidentally. And so like these weird synchronicities and manifestations and shit started to happen until and that band was doing pretty good in the local scene, for what it was worth, being like my first band and stuff. Why is my freaking, damn it, hopefully this video comes out right. My damn browser keeps fucking up. Anyway, so yeah, Ninjas from Texas. The problem is I started to focus on all the negative aspects of Ninjas from Texas. I started to focus on the things I didn't like about the band, and then of course they eventually like kicked me out because I was just causing too many. We had too many personal issues because of my focus on the things I didn't like. Like legitimately, that was the demise of my position in Ninjas from Texas. I just didn't like being in that band anymore. And I was just annoyed and creating a lot of problems, I would say. I was clashing with one of our guitarists at the time. So then, I went through like a couple other bands and periods of like anxiety and depression. I was really focused on my hair. I was like losing my hair, and no one cared but myself. All the girls I was talking to were telling me, "Oh, you're super sexy. Your hair's fine." But I was so focused on things I didn't like that it was actually, I was creating a self-fulfilling prophecy that I was starting to lose a lot of shit. But later on in like September of 2011, I started, I started getting back into the zone, and I had a whole bunch of bands that were wanting me to be the vocalist. I became one of the most sought after vocalists in my city, and everyone knew me because of my vocal covers, and there's a lot of gossip that goes around. I go to shows and people are like, that white kid who does ninja dancing and on all that shit. Of course there's a lot of hatred that will grow. People are jealous of me and whatever, criticism. But I started to believe that I was like the Dr. Dre of death metal. All right? And all the girls wanted me and all this shit. And I was like really feeling like I was a celebrity. And it started to manifest. And I was just really focused on the band life and all that shit. So I think your feelings and your visualizations, like what you feel you are, combined with what you're focused on, whether you're focused on appreciation and happiness and these basic things, or you're focused on music, or you're focused on skateboarding, or focused on money, your feelings combined with whatever it is you're focused on, I think, is what actually creates your outcomes. So that was very, very interesting. So you could change your focus, you could change your feeling. And so, anyway, I was in multiple bands. We toured, the second incarnation of Desecration Demise. I recorded one of my first professional music tracks. You could find it on YouTube if you're interested. It was by a band called From Dreams, and then we played shows. Me and the second incarnation, Desecration Demise. We did a little mini tour in Texas. We played at a freaking professional wrestling event, and I actually have videos of me doing it. At the time, I did have long blonde hair, by the way. I'm sure most people could still tell, but my face, I think, was probably different too. This is over 10 years ago. And so but after a while, I started to focus on, all the things I didn't like about the band. I was like, yeah, I do all the work and this and that. And I was letting these emotions and focusing on what I didn't like, what I didn't want, start to consume me. And next thing you know, I just like left the band. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And I just gave up, and I felt lost and had an existential crisis. And, I started focusing a lot on like my depersonalization and this and that. And I noticed the more I focused on it, the worse it got. The more I focused on anxiety, the worse it got. And then eventually I started focusing on happiness, and I started to focus on the emotions that I wanted. Instead of focusing on whatever illness or condition that you're experiencing, right? Like a lot of people, they search up candida and how to raise their testosterone, and they just are like a rat on a spinning wheel getting nowhere. Like how to cure anxiety, how to cure depersonalization. What I started doing was focusing on, what's the opposite of depersonalization? The opposite of that is living deeply in life. And I started to notice all of the things that made me feel alive, I was not focused on anymore. And so when I started to focus on feeling alive, my depersonalization vanished. I don't even notice I have it unless I really focus on it. Another thing, you feel sluggish and tired. To fix that shit, you should focus on, how to feel alive, how to feel energized, how to feel like a kid again, and then like follow health protocols that are more in alignment with that. Rather than how to fix this and how to fix that, what happens is you start to buy all these supplements and you just you stay in that cycle of illness and spending money and searching. So what you focus on grows also applies to finding effective health remedies. But the key that people need to understand is I didn't just sit around and not do anything. Winning these gold medals, let's talk about that. So Grappling Industries, when I won gold, I focused on training every single day. I focused on jiu-jitsu. I focused on, every single day I focused on improving and getting better and winning and improving my technique. And the more I focused on improving my game to win, Okay, it doesn't mean every single jiu-jitsu round I was like, I'm gonna freaking win no matter what. But I was focusing on executing certain techniques. Like, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna just tap these. I'm gonna tap everybody out with a Kimura from close guard today. And the more I focused on that, the more Kimuras from close guard I started to do. Another thing is, the more I visualize the gold medal in my head, the more I started to talk about my gold medal and affirm my gold medal, the more evidence that I was going to win my gold medal started to appear. And I started to train people like MMA fighters out of MMA gym, and all sorts of shit started to happen just because I started to focus on what I wanted. Okay? Focus on what you want, not on what you don't want, and what you focus on grows. And also, aim to cultivate feelings of appreciation. But the more you focus on what you want, the more naturally you start to feel good shit. And then let's say I have a problem with somebody. Let's say, somebody comes in and, like let's say I have a coach that starts to, cause problems for me. Well, if I start to focus on, I gotta like fix this problem and bring it up every time I see them, sometimes that just keeps creating kind of negative vibes in the area. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's good to like focus on solving those problems, though. You shouldn't just ignore them. But other times I notice if I'm just like focused on, okay, I'm coming in, I'm going to have a good time. And whenever that person I have a problem with kind of like talks to me, I'm going to focus on appreciation and focus on the goodness. And they might be like, hey, Wolfgang, you got to do this and you got to do that. And I'll be like, hey, Coach, like I really appreciate your advice, and I'll take in consideration. Today I'm really not feeling good. I just really want to work on this or that and take it easy. And sometimes that'll kind of like shift the energy towards a more productive fashion compared to me just being like, oh, like I really don't want to do this, like, and trying to like fight it and like resistance. So anyway, yeah. So my last tournament, though, where I won silver, I was really focused on how strong my opponent was, and I was like focused on like, I need to feel a certain way, and I need all these supplements, and basically focused on trying to like fix my lack of drive or aggression or whatever, and I felt like I had a problem, like there was something wrong with me, and I need to fix it. And so I spent most of my preparation period like trying to like change things and tweak things and remedy a problem that only existed because I was so focused on fixing shit. Instead of just like letting go and be like, all right, I'm just going to train, I'm going to have fun, and I'm just going to like focus on just like the process, right? And focus on little things every session and whatever it is, just focus on training. Like I trained, don't get me wrong, but then especially when fight competition came, I was asking everyone. I'm like, hey, you think I'm gonna beat this guy? Hey, like I think what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? I was radiating kind of like feelings of uncertainty, radiating feelings of nervousness, and even though on competition day I literally felt so calm, I felt like I could fall asleep. I don't know. I was just way too attached to the outcome. Before when I won the gold medal, I was like really more focused on the process, and I felt really good about getting better in training. I was like, man, I'm improving. Everything is going great. I love I'm seeing the results, and I'm just focused on having fun during training, and at the same time improving and winning that gold medal. I was more focused on on having fun in the process and improving, rather than. After I won that gold medal, then I was like, oh my God, like now I have such a high standard I got to abide by. I remember I went and I was training with some of my clients, for example, and I was having a bad day, and I'm like, oh my God, like I've been talking about how the meat-based diet makes you superhuman and all this shit, and now I'm like underperforming, and these people I was smashing before, they're smashing me. And because I was so attached to I'm the gold medalist guy who thinks he knows everything, now I'm having a bad day and I have all this resistance built up. I'm like, oh no, this is not compatible with my greatness. And it's like the more attached you are to the outcome, you know what I mean? It creates problems. So, yeah. Anyway, hopefully this video made sense. And if you have any specific questions or you want to, maybe we can like co-create together and dive deeper into some of this stuff, let me know in the comments, and I will talk to you all next time.